order. And the first item is review of last month's agenda, which is on page 3 of your document. If you have any questions or changes, it does run on to the back of the page.
Move to approve.
Do I hear a second? Second from John. Thank you. Those who approve, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? It's approved. And we're ready for the items for consideration. Item A from the Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item that's on your agenda is 3A. It's an allocation of $600,000 in funds from the 2007 GEO bond authorization. This is for a project on Choctaw Road, which is just south of Interstate 40 down to Southeast 89th Street. So this project has progressed very well. It's actually in the final design phases. It's expected to go out to bid this summer of 2015. But our final design cost estimate exceeds the available funds that were allocated to the project. So the bond issue allocated $3.5 million. But there's been several things uncovered during the design, including some additional earthwork and drainage. You're going to see on this mile that's up on your screen, you're going to see that it's actually very flat. And so when we actually look at a design of a project and installing new drainage pipe, we've actually got to have slope to do that. So when we talk about earthwork and drainage, those are two of the major costs. This is also going to be a road widening project. We've got enough traffic on this road that we're actually going to need to build a more permanent detour as a part of the project and not just work with the existing lanes. And so the detour, in addition to a few retaining walls in this project, the request is for $600,000. And happy to answer any questions you might have about the item.
Being new to the board, I'm assuming since this is additional funds, this particular widening projects have been approved by the City Council previously?
It has, and so this is actually a listed project in the bond issue. So the original $3.5 million has been approved as a part of the bond authorization. The $600,000 would actually come out of the unlisted account, and so it would be added to this total cost. So it would take it on up to $4.1 million. Now, any unused funds would be retained in the bond issue, so we're going off of an engineer's estimate at this point, but we don't expect that it will exceed the amount being requested today.
Motion to approve the item.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item B is a very similar item to the one that we just covered. This is the allocation of $825,000 in funds, again from the 2007 GEO bond authorization, but this one is for Sunny Lane Road from I-240 to Southeast 89th Street. The conditions are very similar. You'll see this again as another Ward 4 project. As we go to the next slide, you'll see again, too, it's a very flat street that's going to require some additional earthwork and drainage. So there's storm sewer that was not originally anticipated. Again, also a permanent detour because it's a 2-lane with considerable traffic going to a 4-lane. This one's $825,000 and can answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions?
Motion to approve the item.
Second? Second here. Linda? Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That carries. Thank you. We have the informational items. Public Works, is that you're going to also take that? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is an item that we've included in your packet for this afternoon. It should look like this. It's a spreadsheet. So I think we've addressed this previously. There was $85.5 million that were sold as part of the 2015. This includes projects for resurfacing, residential, arterial widening, arterial resurfacing, bridge, traffic, drainage, parks, fire, police, and also a library. You see the subtotals for each that are there, so you'll see the total streets amount is of $58 million of that 85. You'll see some key projects that are also on there in addition to some of the streets. You're going to see Brock and Twin Creek drainage improvements in Ward 6. You're going to see 2 new fire stations in Ward 3. There's the new Capitol Hill expansion of the library in Ward 4, and then there's continued work at the Central Maintenance Facility, which is at Southwest 15th and Portland, that's part of ongoing city operations that make up that total. On this next slide, we've included a map. And so, again, as we look at these projects, these are listed projects, so these were previously approved as a part of the bond authorization. But as we plan each year, you'll see that we try to spread those across the city, covering all the wards. And so that's what you see here on this drawing. You'll see that the blue lines represent widening projects. The red lines that overlay streets are the reconstruction projects or the resurfacing. You'll see some of the drainage. The bridges are the red triangles. The fire are those that have the red box with the fire hydrant. You'll see the library projects, or at least the Capitol Hill Library project in the center of the page, coded as a part of that legend. And so as an informational item today, this is the projects that we'll actually be taking on in this next year or two. There's a number of projects that have been previously authorized, and as we come up next year to you, you'll see a similar spreadsheet and a similar map. Right now, when we look at the bond issue, we're just approaching the halfway completion point of the 2007. And so moving forward in subsequent years, we'll continue to construct those as funds are sold and are available. I can answer any questions you might have about these projects.
Okay. Next item.
We do have a second informational item for you this afternoon. At a meeting in February 2014, the Bond Advisory Committee had actually requested a resolution encouraging the use of GEO bond funds for the construction of bus shelters as a part of those GEO bond projects. And last month, there was a request that we provide a written report or a status report of each of those. And so what's included, it was a handout that we provided. It should be in addition to your packet. You should have another spreadsheet that looks like this one. And it'll show the status of several of the projects that are in design. And so there is only one bus shelter that's currently being installed, but you'll actually see that we're working on 16 street projects that have been reviewed to date. You recall that we're working very closely, Public Works Department's working very closely with the Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority, who manages the Oklahoma City bus system, EMBARC. And so as we look at those bus routes and we're looking at the projects that we're actually doing either street widenings or resurfacing, we're looking to install bus shelters at those bus stop locations. And so if you look at the spreadsheet that's been attached, you'll see the top 6 projects that are on that spreadsheet are projects that we're engaging bus shelters. You'll see in the middle of the page we do have a bus project that has a route, but it's downtown routes. It's not being recommended for shelters at this time by COPTA. And then the bottom 6 are ones that are projects that just don't have routes associated with the projects themselves. So as we continue to move this forward, we've got 6 projects to have shelters, and you've got some remarks and some notes from staff that are in that far right-hand column about the numbers of shelters and the locations that we're looking to have those added. So from a confirmation from a Public Works point of view, as we engage new projects, and perhaps the list that I just showed you as we move forward into additional construction, we're having those meetings regularly. We've incorporated it as part of our operating process, and so you can be confirmed that on projects where we have bond issue funds being expended, on streets that have bus routes that where COPTA requests that a shelter be added, we're doing that now.
Eric, thanks so much for the report. Really appreciate it. Further along and more is being done than I frankly originally realized, so I do appreciate this. Quick question. Are there bus shelters being still evaluated with other funds other than using GEO bond money?
There is. There are still some advertising agreements, I believe, that are in place with COPTA, EMBARC, that Tyler is continuing to install their own shelter. COPTA also has some grant funds, I understand, that are going to provide for additional shelters over and beyond what the bond issue is providing, but I really would have to have the director, Jason Fairbrush, maybe address the board on any updates for that.
I was just curious about what money might be used first, what would be the priority on how that goes down.
I think that the funding that was available for COPTA is being implemented currently, and I don't know how many shelters that might provide for, but I do know that it's a number of those. But at least from the bond issue perspective, I'm just again recalling that we're about 50% complete. We've got a number of projects yet to be engaged that are going to be able to provide some shelters as a part of this group.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you. You're going to cover that for us. Right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. You have before you the bond executive summary. Through April 14th, for the month of April, we awarded contracts of $2.7 million. Year-to-date, $32.5 million. Amounts awarded but not advertised are $1.185 expected in the remainder of April, and we expect to award $25.3 million in the month of May. Expenditures year-to-date are $49.8 million. In the top right corner, box number 2, the 85% expenditure requirement for sale year 2013, we have expended 53%. We still need $25.8 million to meet the 85% requirement. For the 2014 sale, we're at 10% and still need to make $69.5 million to meet the 85% requirement. Glad to answer any questions.
If there are no questions, we'll move on to new business. Because you are through, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. Anyone have any new business coming before us that you wanted to bring forward? Okay. Items from committee members. Anyone? Citizens to be heard. Okay. To entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. A second? Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you.
14 minutes. You're good.
Was it 14?